Welcome back to our video series on digital content production. In the previous video we started to look at how we color grade our videos, and now we're just going to follow on from there to look at the Lumetri color panel in a little bit more detail. Now the creative tab, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back to the basic correction. I'm just going to reset all of them, and I'm going to reset saturation. Within the creative tab we have a little bit more control over how our image looks. And again, I just want to put all these back to 0 just to show you really from that raw footage what these changes are going to make. With this drop down menu built into Premiere, we have lots of different looks to your video. So these are preset styles that we can add to our video to give it a look, a certain look. Now we can add to these. We have the preset ones, but we can also download and access a massive bank of what's called LUTs, LUTs, to kind of create these dynamics. So maybe you wanted a vintage film look, you can find a look that will apply that. Maybe you wanted a really saturated, contrasty look. We can again find one that's already kind of pre-made that, and use these as a starting point. So find a look that you like, and then work off that. Then tweak the shadows and to suit your footage and how you want something to look. So we can add this look. So I've just gone for a clean Kodak look, and we can decrease the intensity. If that's at 0, we can then apply how much of that look we want to give to it. We can create a faded film look, so this is going to make your blacks look very matte and give it almost like a vintage kind of film look to it. We can increase the sharpening, we can increase the vibrance. Now, difference between vibrance and saturation, especially with skin tones, if you boost the saturations, you may find that the skin tones look very unnatural, they look very orange, and they look like they've had a really bad spray tan. But the vibrance will do a similar thing. It'll increase that punch and that colour level, but it will just kind of maintain them skin tones and give you a more realistic look. So again, just tweaking what you think works for your clip, and you can always go back to the correction and add a little bit more. Maybe we just need to boost that exposure a touch, bring the highlights down, and maybe bring the shadows down as well. So let's play that back and just see how that looks. If we compare that, so I'm just going to make that invisible, we compare that to that original video and then go back and just see how we've made the changes to that. So moving on, again I'm just going to go back to none, reset all these, now when you are grading yourself, you will use a small amount of each of these tabs here. You may be, like we did the creative, we'd have this as a starting point, and then we tweak it with the correction, we'd correct the white balance, we'd maybe then go into curves and apply a slight S-curve to increase the contrast in a certain way. I'm doing these one at a time just to show you that effect from that raw footage through to the changes that we're going to make. So the next one we're going to look at is curves, and again curves is, it breaks down all the pixels within your footage from pure black to pure white, and it will control how much of them, you know, how much of your white pixels are and how much of your darker pixels are, and we can control that. So usually what we do is create what's called an S-curve. So we click on here, and you can see as we lift that the highlights and the brightness is getting lighter, but then we click a second point and then we go for the darker points and we create that contrasty look. And the more that curve is exaggerated, the more that contrasty look is going to be applied. So generally, as a general rule of thumb, you want a little bit of an S-curve, so going down in the shadows and then up in the highlight areas. We can control how your reds look, so if we want to control the red, green and blue, we can increase the reds, and we can control that on various things. If we was having too much of a green cast, we can potentially get that down as well. Let's go back to there. So you can really fine tune and tweak that colour. So let's go back and let's reset the curves and go to the next one, colour wheels. Let's have a look. Can we match? We don't need to match. Now, this is maybe something we'll cover in a later video, but what's been built into Premiere in more recent versions, it is a colour match option. If you was working off two different cameras, and them colours have been interpreted in different ways, the colour match feature can help you match the footage up. But the two clips that we've got now have both been shot in the same setting with the same camera, so they match quite well as it is. We can also get creative now with our shadows and highlights. So potentially we could, I'm just gonna, let's bring them curves back in because they were quite nice, but then we can use the shadows and highlights to kind of create a kind of like a two-tone cross-process kind of look to that. So what we've got here now, we've got quite a stylized look to our footage by making the shadows quite blue and then contrasting that with maybe an orange or a yellowy area in the highlights. Let's see what happens if we make that pink. Now it's going to go too magenta, so I think a nice warm, using that contrast between cold and warm areas looks quite cool. And finally, what we're going to look at, a vignette. So again, I think this suits a vignette, so I think we can just darken them corners, burn them corners in to just draw the viewer's attention into what's happening in the middle of the frame. Perfect, I like that. So there we go, that's how we've kind of created a stylized look to our footage. So again, if we just click the eye icon, you can see our quite flat raw footage compared to our quite stylized look to the final outcome. So I hope that's a nice introduction into colour grading for you over the two videos. Sometimes I think you just remember less is more. Not always will a heavily stylized look to your video be appropriate, so just bear that in mind when you're grading your footage.